Alan Dershowitz, Harvard Law professor emeritus, host of the Dersh Show, and Get Trump author. He came out this weekend, joining his voice to many others, saying, I'm not a Democrat anymore. He's an independent. He's not saying he's going to vote for Trump. But there is a problem in the Democratic Party, as we have been pointing out for a while now. They're not your grandfather's Democratic Party, your father's, even maybe your Democratic Party anymore. They're not. Dershowitz is joining us now. Alan, how are you, sir?
Well, I'm feeling really good as an independent. You know, I've been a Democrat for 70 years. I started supporting the Democratic Party in the early 1950s as a kid who went around in a sound truck supporting Philip Shuppler, the Democratic candidate for assemblyman in Brooklyn. And I haven't voted for a single non-Democrat for president since John Kennedy in 1960. But like Ronald Reagan said, the Democratic Party has left me. By having people like Keith Ellison, who is a supporter of the Reverend Farrakhan, and the Reverend Sharpton, who conducted an anti-Semitic pogrom in the Bronx and in Brooklyn back in the day, and AOC, who says that Israel is a genocidal state, and people like Bernie Sanders. That's not my party. I can't support a party like that. I'm going to be independent, and I'm hoping maybe someday the Democrats will come back to their roots. But until then, don't count on my support.
This is really earth-shattering, I think, to some people. And the minute I read this, Alan, I thought of your children and your wife, because I know decisions that you make, like decisions I make, affect the whole family. How is that going?
Terrible. My nephew wrote to me yesterday and said, "You're now to the right of," and then he mentioned, some of the people who are, the old Republicans, Cheney and others who are now supporting Harris. And my family, everybody in my family is a Democrat, and most of my friends, I don't have that many friends left, because I have supported Donald Trump's civil liberties even before I left the Democratic Party. I'm a civil libertarian first.
I know.
And I hate what the Democrats have done to Donald Trump. That New York case and some of these other cases. So I've been on his side of the legal issues for years now.
Right. But that's not, what they're doing on censorship overall is terrifying, really terrifying.
Well, it's happening around the world. Look
I know.
What's happening in England. They're putting people in jail for protests. It's horrible, and they're applying a double standard on universities. You can't say a word negative about protected minorities on college campuses. But, if you use the wrong pronoun, you'll get suspended. But you can call Israel a genocidal country, and you can say, Jews are destroying America. That's okay. That's First Amendment protected speech. And I don't mind that as long as you apply the same standard to everybody.
To everybody.
They're not. They're applying a double standard.
So, Alan, do you sense that this is more than just you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've gotten hundreds and hundreds of calls and emails from people who say, we used to be Democrats. We still support a lot of the Democratic platform on abortion rights and gay rights, but we can't be members of a party that features Keith Ellison or AOC or people like that. The Republicans have their problem, too, with Tucker Carlson. He platformed recently a Holocaust denier, and he ought to be ashamed of himself for doing that. Neither party is perfect, but I think the Republicans have done a better job of marginalizing their extremists than the Democrats have done.
Well, it's hard when Kamala came out this weekend, saying I understand the Palestinians, those who are standing up for the for Hamas or the Palestinian cause. I have sympathy for them, and that's why Israel they have to offer a two-state solution. They don't want a two-state solution. Israel's offered a two-state solution.
Yeah,
they don't want one.
There isn't a single protester. I will give $1,000 to Hamas if you can show me protesters who are calling for a two-state solution. What they're calling for is the end of Israel.
River to the
sea. What
sea.
they're calling for is a victory of Hamas.
Yeah.
What they're calling for is the end of Israel. They're not calling for a two-state solution. That's ridiculous. And they're not even calling for a ceasefire because Israel has agreed to the ceasefire. Even the State Department has said it's all up to Hamas now. Has a single protester ever said, hey, Hamas, agree to a ceasefire, maybe then you can save some lives? Nobody is calling for that. These are just calls for the end of Israel, and they're calls for the end of America. Recently, some of the protesters were burning American flags and saying our real goal is the destruction of America. Because, Israel is a surrogate for America. Why is there so much focus on Israel? Is there any focus on Darfur and the Sudan, where people are literally dying of hunger and thirst? No, because that has nothing to do with being anti-American. So it's all about anti-Americanism.
So when you left the Democratic Party, it's more than just their stance on Israel?
Oh, yeah. No, it's the whole movement to the hard left. And look, I am a centrist Democrat. I'm a liberal. I'm an anti-radical. I believe in civil liberties and free speech, all the basic aspects of the Bill of Rights. And the Democrats aren't supporting that these days. For them, it's free speech for me, but not for thee.
So Dick Cheney came out, speaking of your nephew, Dick Cheney came out this weekend and said there's never been a bigger threat to the republic, or I think he probably said democracy, than Donald Trump. What do you make of that?
I don't know. I mean, he was a pretty tough vice president and pretty aggressive in his support of American policies. I don't know what it has to do with his daughter. I don't know what it has to do with his feeling that the Republicans haven't given him enough deference. He hasn't quit the Republican Party. As far as I know, he's still a Republican, but he's going to vote for Harris and against Trump. I understand. I know people like that as well, and I know people on the other side. This is an election that's very much about personalities. I don't know very many people who are going to vote for anybody in this election. I think there are a lot of people who are voting against the candidate, and they haven't decided which candidate they're voting against yet. The American people really were entitled to a better choice.
So if you were talking in front of a jury, let's make America 12 men and women, and you had to make a case that the Democrats are actually a bigger threat, at least the way they're currently put together. How would you how would you approach the jury?
Well, I would approach the jury by looking at the facts, by seeing what the Democrats have done, how they've abused the rule of law, how they're violating the First Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment. They're using lawfare in politics. They're distorting democracy. And look, I don't like the fact that President Trump claimed he won the last election. He didn't win the last election, although I think a lot of people think he did. But I don't like the way the world and the country and the Democrats have reacted to that. He has a free speech right to make that position. He shouldn't have been indicted for any of the charges that he was indicted for. And I think if you had to single out one case, it's the New York case against him where they made up a crime, has done more damage to the rule of law and to democracy than anything Donald Trump has done.
Alan, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I feel for your family because I know I know what it's like. I know
it's tough for them. It's tough for them. But they have to buy the whole package. They know who I am. I'm always going to stand up for principle. And I put family first, but I put principle first too. So and mostly my family has been supportive. Not everyone in the family, but mostly my family has been supportive.
Yeah. Well, you're probably feeling a lot like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. right now.
Well, Bobby's an old friend of mine. I've known him since he was a young man, and of course I've supported the Kennedys right from the beginning. I'll tell you a funny story about that. So I was at a dinner party when I was still invited to dinner parties, and they seated Caroline Kennedy next to me. And she said, if I knew you had been invited, I wouldn't have come because you defended Donald Trump. And I said, yeah, but I also defended Ted Kennedy. That's how I first came to Martha's Vineyard, defending Ted Kennedy at Chappaquiddick. Would you have walked out on me for that? Well, she had no answer.
Huh. What do you think of Robert F. Kennedy joining the Trump thing?
I'm not surprised. I mean, they have a lot in common. And, he has very strong views, some of which I agree with, some of which I disagree with. But he's a serious guy. And I have to tell you, he's a great volleyball player. I've played against him a couple of times. My nose still hurts from some of the spikes into my face. But I like Bobby.
Yeah.
And, I like his feistiness. I don't agree with all of his politics, but he shouldn't be attacked by his family. He's an individual. He's entitled to make his own decisions.
Alan Dershowitz, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Good to talk to you.